Beautiful angel, Paul Luftenegger, thank you, thank you, thank you for this connection. Thank you for sharing your story in this new book of ours, Life After Trauma. It is such a gift to be in your world and to have you in mine and to be able to share this moment together.
Thank you. I have to say I feel the exact same way, and I know we're going to create a beautiful container of healing vibrations here together today.
Absolutely. You know, we were talking before, one of the intentions that was set very early on with this Life After Trauma series is to be able to give people who are hurting, whether they have been traumatized or they've witnessed it, I want them to know that there is a happy life after trauma. Because when you're going through it, whether it's a physical, emotional, mental, whatever, it's very hard to see a future that is worth living into and living for. So I definitely believe that by creating this conversational space through these interviews, through the book itself, we're going to give people a safe place to touch all of the wounds of our trauma and to go beyond them, to heal and move beyond them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I know just before coming kind of to this space together today, really with you and everyone watching. First of all, I want to just say, anyone watching this, I want to just say that we have compassion for any pain or trauma that you might be experiencing right now, because I know what it's like. I know Andrea knows what that's like through depression, and just that dense space is a way that I would sort of explain that, because this space is very sacred to me. This is a holy space. This is a not judgmental space. This is a space for healing. And that means that basically it's a space of divine love. So I just wanted to say that's my intention today. I want to thank you for coming, because I know sometimes it's really hard to show up with something that's light when you feel dense. So I just want to sort of alchemize that togetherness and say that we see and honor you today. So that's my intention, is just for you to know that you're honored today, that you're here and it matters, and there's no mistake in this divine alignment. So thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing, and just letting go of maybe some of that pain that you might be holding, that we can sort of alchemize with the divine love of togetherness.
Yes. That's a beautiful container to set the stage for this conversation. I am in awe of you and in such admiration for how you've taken what many of us would consider one of the most traumatic experiences of life, and you've moved forward, not just for yourself, for your own healing, but to now transmit that around the world with the beautiful work that you do. And so let's get into it. The story that you share in this book, Life After Trauma, is about losing your father to suicide. Mm-hmm. So take us to the day that you found him.
Okay. Well, one of the things that as a vision I had this morning, I meditated and prayed a lot before coming today, because I wanted to kind of go into the descended space of where I came from in order to help people kind of move forward or through grief or pain. So I was thinking of the movie The Titanic in particular, and you know how basically you go back, let me go back with you. Yeah. So I'm going to go back to this space that was the hardest day of my life. Yeah. And I'm going to take you on a little journey through this. So long story short, on March the 6th of 2011, my father sadly took his own life. And he was 56 years old. He was a beautiful man. He still is with me, probably more today than probably when he was on the earth, if you will. And one of the things that happened, it was sort of the strangest morning in many ways, because it was the most angelic morning I've ever had in my life before we found out. So I've shared this, in many different ways around the world, working within kind of the space of helping people go through pain or trauma. So I love that I'm here with you and everyone together today. Long story short, basically I had an awakening from the moment I found out that my father died. I was catapulted into this really crazy space with 911, which is emergency services. And when someone dies by suicide, what people don't know is that when you call 911, they ask you to actually cut the body down.
Oh my gosh.
So I would never have thought that otherwise. And I will tell you, we knew that my father was dead, and, I was with my mother. My mother found him, and then I actually kind of got involved in the situation. And he actually, I will say, he took his own life and hung himself in our garage. And I can't explain this from an energetic perspective, but it was like there was a force field around us. Do not go near him, was the message. Very clear. Do not go near him. Wow. So it was this thing where the outside world was saying what to do, and that was to go and help him by cutting him down. And I had this sort of trauma in my experience of being told that, and then also having to do that. So my mother and I kind of got together and really tried to go and do this. And what's really amazing is that what people don't know is they send everyone. So we have a fire department that's probably a block away from where we live. They were here before we could even do anything. And I will say, when you hear, I used to complain about sirens. What I hear about that in my inner space of knowing now, those sirens I now hear are angels. Every time you hear a siren, someone angelic is going to help someone else. And I've never been more happy to hear a siren in my life. I knew that I was going to be okay from that moment that I heard someone coming to help us, because we couldn't deal with it anymore. It was beyond our abilities. Yeah. So, I would say that, from that space, I had an experience with God, really from the get-go. And what's interesting is that these people came in and took over, and they treat it like a crime scene when someone takes their own life. What happened is they separated my mother and myself and took us apart. So long story short of all of that, because it was a very big space and a lot of really big emotions come up. But what I didn't know when someone dies is that God shows up. And showed up for me. And this is something that I think people forget in trauma, because you forget sometimes that God is there for you. But your job is to go inside of yourself and find God within you. Because what I was shown very clearly the day that my father died, I remember going into the bathroom in between giving a statement to the police. And I remember literally looking into the mirror, because I couldn't figure out if it was a dream, if it was real. I couldn't figure out what was sort of going on in this trauma. And I remember just zoning in on my eyes and praying into my pupils in particular. And what's really interesting is, and I've shared this in many different stories, but basically God showed up and showed me that nothing on the outside mattered. So this trauma sort of started to turn very quickly into a God experience. And I remember basically moving into the day that it kind of happened afterwards. Everyone shows up. And what's really interesting, this woman came from the police service, and she actually shared something with us that really mattered, which we would never have thought about. I remember she told us to make sure that we know that we have a decision to make right here, right now. And it's how you deal with this moving forward. In her experience, she just gave us stats. Basically, you have two ways to deal with this. You can deal with this and be quiet, but people are going to have questions. So you need to have an answer ready for your heart, for your soul, but have an answer ready of how you're going to deal with this. Some people don't tell the truth about suicide, and some people tell the truth. Some people cover it up, and some people choose to be open about it. But be very clear, people will have questions, and I want you to be prepared when they come to you. And it's the best advice I've ever been given in my life, because I think, like our life, we have a choice to be truthful about our life, or we have a choice to not be. That means wearing a mask or not.
Yeah. Now, but Paul, I'm curious, did your father show any signs of depression, of losing hope in life? Because the way you described him is he was loving, he was always giving to others.
Well, basically, here's the thing. With suicide and with many of these sort of mental health kind of scenarios, we understand them backwards. Yeah. I always say suicide, you understand backwards. So it's an unraveling. So in answer today, yes. At the time, not at all. Not to this extent. I thought, I always thought it was a possibility because my father's father took his own life. But my father never really talked about it. So I also know that with suicide, I look at it now with him so differently than when it happened, because and I made a commitment with myself. I wasn't going to play the what if game. Not going to do that, because the what if game of the past, it's already happened. It's happened for a reason. And so the what if game for the past for me is not a game I'm interested in playing, but I will say I do play what if games with the future. So that's sort of, I mean, to answer your question about if I knew, yeah, that would be the answer.
Wow. And so you say that on that day you had a God experience.
Yeah.
And when you prayed into your own eyes, it was God that responded to you. Tell me about that.
Well, basically, here's the deal. I started to spin, and I remember pulling my hair out of my head to try to feel some physical sensation that I was present. I wanted to just feel like, I don't know if I needed to feel like my physical, body, but I felt like I just needed to pull my hair, and I just kept pulling it in the mirror. And what's really interesting with God is God came very clear while I was giving my statement to the police that there will be blessings that come from this. And that inner voice was like a strength. And I remember being so confused by it.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to also say that's really weird about suicide, and I understand kind of fear and the mental loop of trauma, because what happens when you're traumatized, which I know very well, is you have this loop that will not stop. It's relentless. It's just that every thought just is about what happened nonstop. That's trauma. And that loop goes on. It goes on when you go to bed at night to the point of falling asleep. And then it goes on when you start your day, and it's nonstop. But what happened for me is that I will never forget the first second. It was a nanosecond where that stopped, where I didn't think about it for a little tiny moment. And I remember if that light was there, if that could stop for just a second, it gave me hope that there would be more of that to come. And I love that little nanosecond of gap is how I got here 8 years later, almost. And I made a commitment really with God to go within myself every day. And I used to pray, but God showed me that I needed to meditate, and meditation was to recharge and heal the inner space of me. And God showed me that I needed to find peace within myself, because until I did that, I would never be healed. And that peace was sort of my mantra for the first while. And nature was what God told me to go to. So I went for nature walks pretty much 24/7. I would go to nature. I would hug trees, because nature is heaven. It's non-judgmental, and it's the most healing vibration there is. So anyone that's traumatized, I would strongly suggest going to nature and really meditating. And that's what God showed me to do, and it worked really well.
And how about your mother?
Well, we sort of went through this all together. So my husband, my mother, and myself, and then obviously our extended family as well. And my mother has, it was a very different experience with her because it was her husband. They were married for about 40 years. So, a long time. And, like, again, suicide, you understand backwards. So the trauma of it, we sort of went through together. The other thing that's really interesting that I feel I wanted to mention too is that social worker that came that day from the police service. The thing that she told us to do, which really helped, is she said, what I want you to do is get a nightlight or a light in the hall, leave it on until you're ready to turn it off. And we left a light on in the hall for probably about 2 years. Because with grief or with trauma or with any sort of density, sometimes just having a reassurance of light on at night when it's dark, it really helps you. And that light was so important that we kept it on all the time. And I'll never forget when we turned it off, we collectively as a family decided to turn it off together. And it was really quite amazing when we did, because we knew that we were finally in a new space where we didn't need the light at night. So, yeah.
Now, the other piece of that story from your experience with God, I mean, God communicated directly to you saying you're going to get through this. There will be blessings. You're going to have to go within and meditate. But God also spoke to you about what you should be doing musically and how that was going to transform.
Yeah. So what happened right afterwards, and this coincides, and I was thinking about this too. It's very interesting because it's an Oprah Winfrey kind of connection.
Right.
So I want to just say that what happened magically, and I totally believe in divine alignment, divine synchronicity, 100%. No shadow of a doubt, okay? So Oprah Winfrey was finishing up the Oprah Winfrey show and starting the OWN network at the same time. So my father died in March. Oprah was ending her show and starting OWN, which was a conscious platform of TV. And what's interesting is I could not expose myself to negative,
Right.
any negative news, nothing to do with murder shows, none of that. I couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
And what's sort of interesting, this healing that happened with Oprah, and this is the connection to you that I think is fascinating, is that, you know, what Oprah Winfrey did for me in the first space of my healing was that she reminded me that I'm a miracle. And this changed the cellular structure of my being, because here's the deal, and I want to repeat this today because, and I'm going to paraphrase what she told me through her own network, ultimately, that changed my life forever, was that, you know, those two cells that made you, the first two cells, the one from your father, the one from your mother, and all the choices that had to be made for those two cells, that particular sperm, that particular egg, of all the eggs and sperms, they came together to make you. And because you're here, you matter. And because I'm here, I matter. And that none of us can do this alone. And I realized my life changed from hearing the miracle story of myself and honoring it. And that meant that I needed to go back and do a life review. So I did. And I went back to all of my life, and I went to all the good moments, the diamond light moments, and I realized that they were all to do with music. And I realized why I had been so afraid to do it. And the world told me that I couldn't make money doing it. The world told me I would never be good enough. The world told me that I was basically worthless, ultimately. And real healing comes from when you honor your own worth. So I started writing music. And when you feel your worth with God, because what happened for me is I didn't care about the outside world anymore. My benchmark changed. Yeah. And I had to go back to the two cells and all the things that made me okay until I wasn't, to basically figure it out. So I let go of the pain bodies, you know, the really hard stuff. I was called fat as a kid. I was kind of bullied. I was, you know, really, quite frankly, ostracized a lot in my childhood. I'm also gay, so there was all that kind of negativity of programming through the, you know, the Catholic Church. I love their good stuff, but man, the programming they did for me to not be okay with me, I needed to heal. So music really was a vessel that I loved. And I sang for the Pope when I was 16 in Rome, and I had some amazing stuff that happened. And I turned it off somewhere along the way because I was scared I couldn't make a living doing it. So I started writing music, and it started flooding out of me. And what's sort of interesting is all the miracles that happened from every single day I started. And I did that pretty much right from after my father's suicide. I just sat at the piano and let God come through me. Yeah. Yeah.
And now it's amazing because I've heard you sing live. I've been around you for the last few years. And the effect that your music has, I know that it is the divine working through you, through your vocal cords, through you playing, through your writing. I know that. And what's been amazing, though, is to see people who are in trauma, and including animals.
Yes.
As you know, our dear friend Charlotte Banff, who is in our Magic and Miracles book, she has played your music for traumatized animals that she's worked with in these rescue centers, and they get blissed out. People are using it in hospitals. It's being used in schools. So how does that sit for you to go from? And I can relate because I've had all those same messages in my head from my family. You can't make a living at that. That's not a real job. You know, you're not going to be as good as so-and-so, la, la, la. So all that programming, I know how that can hold us back from finally just giving in to let the voice come through. So how does that feel to have gone from, no, I can't do this, to, wow, God is using you to heal?
It's crazy cool is what it is. And what's really interesting is it's so fascinating because what you seek is seeking you. This is what I realized. What I love about music that people don't know is that it's a frequency and a vibration. And if it's loving, if it's kind, if it's joy-filled, if it's heartfelt, ultimately from the soul, it brings that energy to you because that's who's going to like it. So it's a perfect example of kind of the law of cause and effect or the law of karma because it's a frequency. So it's a loving and kind from God. Of course, it's going to bring loving and kind people to my life. Yeah. What's really cool, and I just want to tell you that one of my favorite moments that I've ever had, and this is going back a while ago, when I was releasing Love Expanding Love, I'll never forget, this beautiful person wrote me while I was living in London, England, releasing this album from Queen's Park in my little flat. It was so cool because this woman was like, I'm Oprah's neighbor. And I was like, oh, really? And you're in California? And she's like, no, I live in Hawaii. And I was like, Hawaii? I didn't even know Oprah had a home in Hawaii. And she said, she's my neighbor. I want to give her your music. I really love it. I'm going to actually make that happen. And I'll tell you, I was praying for something to happen with Oprah for a while, just to say thank you. I just wanted to say thank you. Yeah. What's so cool is this alignment happened where she actually literally took a picture of Oprah's front gate for Christmas. A Christmas wreath was on it. And she put a note with all of my music on Oprah's front Hawaii gate of her home. And Oprah sent a voicemail message to that woman thanking her for my music. Aww. And the woman sent it to me. So I have her message saved. And I have to say, hearing and knowing that can happen gave me so much hope to just keep going, because it hasn't been easy all the way. Yeah. It isn't easy, doing what we're doing. But I think ultimately all these little treasure milestones are diamond light moments that happen from, I think, ultimately those first two cells I was talking about from my mother and my father. And I know that I have my father with me to help me, because we forget when people die or when we go through trauma, if there's something that happens, the souls involved stay with us energetically with the vibrations. And my father's with me more today, like I said, than ever before. And I know that just when you really look at my life now, I mean, I've sang at the UN 3 times. I remember being there the first time and I was in awe, the second time more in awe, but these are the things that can happen when you expand love. So I'm so grateful, to answer your question, for just the music that's happened.
Yeah. So let's talk about this. Your father is with you, because the other part of your work, besides being this conscious musician, singer, songwriter, you also are an ascension guide, and you're helping people on their spiritual journey. And part of that is that you are channeling now messages, and you're getting visitations, I guess you might call it, from the beyond, from people like beautiful Maya Angelou and Louise Hay, Dr. Wayne Dyer, and you say that your father is with you. So do you see them? Do you hear them? Do you feel them? How does that appear to you?
Yeah, so I think ultimately what we have to remember is that we're multisensory beings.
Yes.
So what I realized, obviously in my life review, is that I've always been a medium. I've always been connected. And I remember these spirits showing up for me when I was a kid. And that Catholic sort of teaching taught me to be scared of that and whatever. But I realized, that deprogramming happened. And then when I turned my vibration up to become my authentic self, which is your soul light shining with love, with God. Of course, we're going to have experiences with souls beyond the veil. And this I just relax with it after my father died. So he's sort of been my teacher. And what's kind of interesting is, when I look at it now, I've had visits. I mean, so it started really with Dolores Cannon and Sylvia Brown in particular. So she came to me, and Sylvia Brown, I don't know if you know her work, but she actually was amazing, a big part of my childhood. And then what's interesting is Louise Hay came through, and she's been the strongest, and Maya Angelou as well. And a lot of these people were alive before they transitioned. And then after they got to the other side, they would come to me. And it was really funny. The other person that's really interesting is Garry Marshall came to me the other day. And
who's Garry Marshall?
So he's Penny Marshall's, he created Pretty Woman. So it's amazing. So he came to me the other day, and these people come to me from the other side, and they're part of my team on the other side. So it's kind of interesting because I never knew that through music or through doing this stuff that part would show up, but it has. And I've done one-on-one sessions with people from all around the world. And, what I love about the metaphysical is that it's starting to be understood and accepted more and more. And we're all curious about it because it is there for us.
Yeah.
So I feel that, you have those visions. I know you do, I do, and so many of the people that we know. And what's really cool is when we start to empower our inner understandings or inner sort of technologies, we realize that we're all built the same way. But it takes us ascending out of pain to get there, I think, ultimately. And that's kind of what I do in my work, really. So,
and you actually have a process, like you take people through an ascension process. So tell me a little bit about that, because I feel like people are becoming more aware of the pain body and that we store things in our energy field and we have auras. And even me as a physician, I learned very early on in my career, even though they didn't teach me in medical school, that I could see that people trapped emotions in their tissues, that their physical ailments were sometimes not from some organic cause. They were things from the past trauma. So what is this ascension process that you see us humans going on? And maybe, maybe other animals.
I love how you just explained that. That's a really beautiful, I love that you brought up the medical side. So here's the thing. When you ascend, what happens is you have to kind of go through basically self-worth. And really, self-worth is where it all begins. So if you go back, and this is what God is showing me now. So my music, and I remember the message was that you will write music to change the world forever. That's a pretty big message to hear. And to tell you, I was like, oh, no, not me. Are you crazy? I'm not doing that. But I realize now, I've just accepted it. That's what I do. So my music is a codex or a lexicon of language in vibration of healing. So if you go back to my album Through Trauma, the first one, the second one, the third one, the fourth one, the fifth one, the sixth one, and then the seventh one, which is coming to life soon, it's a process that's able to take someone through energetically how to ascend. I haven't really shared this publicly, but that's really what this is. So it helps people to do that. So it's really an embodiment of work to help basically the ascension process. So what I wanted to share in this space, I think ultimately with the ascension process is that it's a letting go. And it's a letting go of limiting beliefs. It's a letting go of programming. It's a letting go of all the things you've been told you're not to empower what you are. And I'm not unique. I use the word ascension. They showed me with my team on the other side is that I had to draw a circle. And I would go through a circle basically with messages before I would contact the other side. So when people have agreed to work with me out with one-on-one sessions, I was showing this process with a pyramid, and all these messages that come through in the pyramid would be the first messages. And then I would go through basically how it's almost like a prescription of ascension tools. And they would show me all these visions, and then I was to write them down and then go through that with my clients. And that's what I started to do. So that's sort of my one-on-one work. But at the same time, my music is also a really accessible way for people to sort of go through that space. And what people don't understand about music is it's a way to get inside. There's not very many things you can get inside with. And it's an energy because it comes from the soul with God's soul. So with the angelics, and it is a vibration to go within. So it's a tool, essentially to help people. And I think people need to be reminded to close their eyes, because I think when your eyes are open, you don't realize you're the inside. So close your eyes, you realize you're the inside. And when you listen to music that's empowering and ascended, or ascension process, it really helps to close your eyes and put earbuds in so the sound is isolated. So anyways, that's a little bit about that. That's
awesome. I love it. I didn't realize that about this, each of these albums. That's so cool. So now I want to listen to your stuff in sequence and go through it. So for those that would like to connect with Paul, you can visit him online at bekindness.com, and you can check out his albums there. And I'm so excited about this next project that you're embarking on, because besides just music, which is beautiful and transformative, you're going to be bringing to the world a meditation CD next.
And what I want to say about this one too, and this is sort of like that kind of new thing that's not really been done or understood probably, but it's going to be probably a little bit more musical. So there's actually going to be a sung meditation. So that's sort of what I've been shown to do. I had this beautiful vision yesterday, one of the ones I'm going to put on here, and I've been writing it all, this last little while. And they showed me yesterday this vision of basically putting your hands on your heart together and actually becoming the light from the inside and the outside and actually merging that light with God. And this is the sort of meditation that's going to be on the new album. So I'm really excited about it. It's been paid for by probably some of the most amazing people from around the world. It's crowdfunded. And it's a container of just pure love and pure peace. So I'm excited to bring that to life next week.
I love it. I love it because these are various ways and tools for people to get beyond their pain, to really get the healing and to ascend, because we're not meant to stay trapped in that traumatic energy.
And I totally think that that's the best thing to say here too, because we don't have to get stuck in pain and we don't have to be victims of our lives. We get to transcend them. And I think ultimately, I wanted to say this out loud, is we get to transcend trauma. And we're going to. And the only real key is to let go of the past, to clean out the inside, to wash away, let go of, and bring in new, divine, loving, peaceful vibrations. And bringing in that space is actually what I want to just focus on for just a sec, because when you bring it in, it recharges you. And there's so much science behind this that's being understood more and more, because we are like a battery.
Yes.
And we have to recharge ourselves with that divine nectar or that divine vibration, because we are living in a world that will suck it out of us if we don't.
Yeah.
So that's really, and trauma, to heal it, you have to fill up the inside space with divine love, because you are made of love. And that's like almost like connecting with like a plug. You bring it to God and you bring it to you. And God has infinite amounts of it.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say that.
I love that. I love that analogy, because I know for myself that the whole trauma of finally breaking free from the old version of me and claiming my authentic self, one of the healing processes for me was Qigong. And we talk about in the Chinese system that there is heavenly Qi, if you want to call it that. And it's about bringing it in and filling up. And I think that for me, as a person who's worked with trauma in my medical business, many people are searching on the outside for a pill or a therapeutic approach. And of course, before people are in therapy, they're doing drugs and alcohol and sex and gambling and shopping and all these things. But it really is about filling, but it's not about filling with anything that you can buy on a shelf. It's about refilling with that divine love, light, that life force energy that renews us.
Yeah, and that's what we're made of. That's our original light. So it's sort of just remembering that, and then really actually, I think, expanding that within the inside. And that goes back to the chakras that I think need to be cleaned, and they basically clean them. I always talk about vacuuming out the chakras. You vacuum. And then what's fun is you fill the chakra with new love and you connect them all together, and then they glow together, and then your aura starts to come to life. And that's that life force energy glowing around you. And you got to clean that sludgy, really pain and dense vibration out of you. And I didn't ever really sort of understand, but the world kind of makes that happen subconsciously if you're not aware of it, because everything's energy. And then once you're aware of it, you're like, oh, that's the problem. And that's the stuff. It's all based around fear. Yeah. So anyways.
Well, I love that your music then, part of the healing process that comes from listening to the music is that you don't have to process it psychologically or mentally. It can start to filter in and change those vibrations to fill you up. I love it. I love it.
So, love it.
Paul, you are truly a miracle. Such a blessing to have you on this planet. And I'm so grateful that you said yes to God when God said you are meant to write music that will change the world, and embracing all of your gifts as a medium. It's awe-inspiring, and I'm just grateful for you.
Thank you so much. And I just want to say to you, thank you so much for the genius that you are and the genius that everyone is, because I think when we start listening and honoring the namaste, you know, I honor the universe in you because I know you honor the universe in me. That's the one word that can change the world forever. And I just want to say namaste to everyone listening, because you are full of the universe and your only job is to remember it. So I love you. Thank you for doing all of this incredible work. And I have a feeling that there's so many amazing things that are going to happen from this book and from your work and us holding hands together in the light working movement that we're making with ultimately love.
Yes, love, 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 and love expanding love. So my friends, please connect with Paul, get a copy of the book so that you can read his story, and also his story in the other book that we've just published, which is Magic and Miracles. And if you connect with Paul online, as well as on social networks, you can see that he does on Sundays a live Facebook transmission called Love Expanding Love. So if you visit us online at myliferewritten.com, you'll see his bio and all of the links to his social media channels so that you can get his music and stay connected.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Mwah. Much love to you, my friend.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Did you enjoy that interview? I sincerely hope so. Please support the authors by getting a copy of the book and click that like button. Share this video with other people who need a little bit of positivity sprinkled into their life so that they know that, you know, we're all stronger than we even think that we are, and we're never alone. There is a divine presence supporting us through all of our trauma and drama in this life. You can read all of the author bios and even get some free gifts from our participating authors. Just visit myliferewritten.com. And if you or someone you know has a beautiful story to share of how you have overcome trauma and you are thriving and full of resilience, then check out our publishing options at makeyourmarkglobal.com. Until we meet again, my friend, please remember that you are a gift to the world. So share your presence with passion. Much love.